Hi everyone! Welcome back to our Jack 7 class, The Contemporary World. Today's topic is something super relevant sa buhay nating lahat. It's the global demography. So ano nga ba ito? Basically, it's the statistical study of human populations. Pero don't worry, hindi ito sobrang math heavy. We're talking about things like gaano karami tayo or how many people are there, saan tayo nakatira, where are people located, gaano kabilis dumami o tumatanda ang populasyon, how fast is the population growing or aging, and bakit nga ba lumilipat ang mga tao mula sa isang lugar papunta sa iba? Why do people migrate? At first glance, parang simple lang. Pero demography actually affects everything from the economy to healthcare, education, job opportunities, food supply, and even a country's influence sa buong mundo. In other words, understanding people, how we move, grow, and age helps us understand the world. Kaya tara, let's go into this lesson and understand what global demography is and why it matters today more than ever. All right, so let's break it down. What exactly is demography? In simple terms, demography is the study of human population dynamics. Ibig sabihin, pinag-aaralan natin ang mga pagbabago sa bilang, galaw at katangian ng mga tao using actual data. Hindi ito hula-hula class o chamba. It's all based on research and statistics. So ano nga ba ang tinitingnan sa demography? Usually, we'll look at things like birth rates, gaano karaming tao ang ipinapanganak, also death rates, ilan ang namamatay. We also look at aging, gaano kabilis tumatanda ang populasyon, and definitely migration. Bakit lumilipat ang mga tao from one place to another? Now you might ask, Ma'am, why does it matter? Class, by studying demography, we can see important global trends like, first, bakit ang ibang bansa ay sobrang siksika na sa dami ng tao? Second, bakit naman sa iba unti-unti nang kumukonti ang populasyon? And more importantly, how governments can plan better para may sapat na schools, no, job opportunities, hospitals, housing, and even disaster preparedness. So yes, demography helps societies prepare for the future, whether that's dealing with an aging population, rapid urban growth, or even brain drain due to migration. Okay, so let's talk about the three major forces that shape populations over time. These are called the main demographic processes, and they are birth and death, aging, and migration. First, let's discuss what's birth and death. So these are the basic in and out of population. Births or fertility, meaning ilang tao ang ipinapanganak. For deaths or mortality, ilan naman ang namamatay. So the difference between the two gives us the natural increase or decrease in a population. Next is aging. Populations do not just grow, they also grow older. Over time, people age, and this affects everything from healthcare needs to retirement systems. So some countries have very young populations and other are rapidly aging, like Japan or parts of Europe. And lastly, migration. Ito yung paglipat ng tao from one place to another. People might move for work, safety, education, or a better life. Migration can be temporary, like the OFWs, or can also be permanent, like immigration or moving to a new city. Now, class, why is this important? Because any change in these three, birth and death, aging, or migration, can create a ripple effect across society. Now, more births is equals to need for more schools and jobs. More elderly equals need for more healthcare. And more migrants equals need for housing, integration, or even new policies. So demography helps us understand how society is changing so we can plan for the future. Now, class, here's the interesting part. These three processes constantly reshape populations. Kahit maliit na pagbabago sa isa sa kanila, birth, death, or migration, can lead to a domino effect on major areas of society. Like, for economy, no, more people equals more jobs needed. For education, mas maraming bata equals kailangang dagdagan ang schools and teachers. For healthcare naman, tumataas ang demand for hospitals and services, especially kapag tumatanda ang populasyon. And also for politics, population shifts can change voting patterns, political priorities, or even international relations. So, yes, population isn't just about numbers, it's about real life impact on how countries work and how people live. Alright, now let's zoom in a bit. Tingnan naman natin, class, ang population situation dito sa Pilipinas. So as of April 24, 2025, no, the day I recorded this discussion, the estimated population of the Philippines is around 116.6 million. And that's a massive number. And yes, our population is still growing, although not as fast as before. So the projected mid-year population for 2025 is 116,786,962 people. So kahit bumabagal ang growth rate, we still added almost 1 million people in just 1 year. So let's break down some key stats. The growth rate is 0.81%, and this shows a slowdown in how fast our population is increasing. For fertility rate, it's 1.88, and this is below the replacement level of 2.1, meaning families are having fewer children on average. For the median age, it's 26.1 years, which means our population is still relatively young. And for urban population, it's 49.3%, and that's about 57 million Filipinos living in cities already. So globally speaking, we're currently the 13th most populous country in the world, and our population makes up of 1.42% of the entire world population. Now, let's pause and reflect for a moment. With over 116 million Filipinos sharing the same roads, hospitals, schools, water, electricity, and job market, can our systems keep up if we continue to grow like this? That's where demographic planning becomes super important. Demography helps us anticipate future needs para makapaghanda tayo sa education, healthcare, jobs, housing, and more. So, a quick reflection question for you, class. If our population keeps growing, are we ready? Do you think so? And can our economy and education and healthcare systems support everyone? Hmm. Let's keep that in mind as we move forward with our discussion. Okay, so here's something important to note. Our population is still growing, yes, but more slowly than before. In fact, there's been a slight decline in our population growth rate in recent years. And one of the biggest reasons behind that, first, the growing use of contraceptives, and better access to family planning. Class, mas maraming Pilipino ngayon ang may access sa impormasyon at serbisyo na tumutulong sa kanila magplano ng pamilya. And couples are deciding when and how many children they want to have based on their situation and capacity. And this shift leads to number one, smaller family sizes, two, delayed childbirth, three, more women joining the workforce, and lastly, more resources or time, money, and energy being focused on fewer children. So, in a way, family planning becomes both a personal and economic decision for individuals and for the country as a whole. And that's why even small changes in reproductive behavior can lead to big effects on national population trends. Let's talk numbers again, but this time on a global scale. So the current global fertility rate is around 1.9 live births per woman. Now, that might sound okay, pero here's the catch. It's below the replacement level, which is 2.1. So what does that mean? Ma'am, ano po yan? It means that on average, couples are not having enough children to replace themselves, which could lead to shrinking populations in the long run, especially in places where the fertility rate continues to fall. Now, let's bring it back, class, to the Philippines. Our fertility rate is still slightly higher than the global average, but the trend is clear. It's going down. Why? Because of some major social changes like first, higher education for women. No? More women are finishing school and pursuing careers. Second, greater access to jobs, especially for women, which often delays marriage and childbirth. And lastly, the urban lifestyle shifts. Now, living in cities tends to make people prefer smaller families due to the cost of living and limited space. So, overall, while we are still growing, the pace is slowing. And that has a long term effect on how countries plan for the future, for education, labor force, healthcare, and more. Okay, let's proceed to life expectancy. In simple terms, that's the average number of years a person is expected to live. Globally, class, here's how it looks right now. Now, 69.9 years old as the overall average, 73 years old for women, and 67 years old for men. Now, you might be wondering, Ma'am, bakit mas mahaba ang buhay ng mga babae? Bakit nga ba? Well, class, there are a few reasons. First, women tend to be more health conscious. Yan. Second, mas maaga silang nagpapa-check up or seek medical help. And lastly, no, biologically, they are generally less prone to risky behaviors like smoking or dangerous physical activities. So, yes, longer life expectancy is a good sign. It usually means better healthcare, better nutrition, and overall improved quality of life. But it also comes with new challenges. Una na dyan, class, populations are aging, which means more people are living into their 70s or 80s and beyond. Next, that puts pressure on healthcare systems, pension programs, and even the job market. And lastly, countries need to adjust their policies and services to care for the older citizens. So, in short, longer life is good, but it also means we need to plan smarter for an aging population. Next up, let's talk about a very important indicator. That's infant mortality rate. Class, this tells us how many babies die before reaching their first birthday, and usually measured per 1,000 live births. So, globally speaking, the average is around 19.8 infant deaths per 1,000 live births. And that might seem like just a number, but behind that stat are real stories of loss. And it tells us a lot about the healthcare system and living conditions in a country. In many developing countries, infant mortality is still a big problem because of, first, lack of clean water. Next, limited access to medical services. And third, poor nutrition for mothers and babies. So, as you notice, these are preventable causes. Kaya mahalaga talaga na palakasin ang maternal and child health programs ng mga bansa, lalo na sa rural at marginalized communities. So when a country lowers its infant mortality rate, it usually means that they have better healthcare, more educated mothers, and stronger social support systems. So in short, class, infant mortality isn't just a health issue. It's also a measure of development and equity. Let's proceed to urban population trends. Class, did you know that nearly 50% of the world's population, or about 56 million people, now live in urban areas? So malaking pagbabago ito, class, from rural areas to cities. Take Quezon City, here in the Philippines, for example. We know that it's one of the most densely populated cities in our country. And the place is always bustling with activity, and people move to urban areas like this for better job opportunities, access to education, and also the healthcare services. But of course, hindi laging smooth sailing. With more people moving into cities, we face some serious challenges like first, the traffic congestion. So have you ever been stuck in a never-ending traffic jam? Sa mga urban areas, madalas talagang ma-traffic dahil sa dami ng sasakyan and kakulangan sa kalsada. We can also experience this here in Naga City and along Pili Highway. Next is the housing shortages. As cities grow, now, the demand for for the housing services also increases, leading to overcrowding and a lack of affordable options. And lastly, the pollution and waste management. So, more people mean more waste and pollution. Mas mahirap i-manage ang air pollution at waste disposal sa mga cities or lungsod. So, while cities offer lots of opportunities, they also come with their own set of problems that need attention. Speaking of Quezon City as a populous city, we proceed now to the population density. Now, population density tells us how many people live in a specific area. Gaano karami ang tao sa isang lugar. The higher the density, the more crowded a place is. And when we talk about population density in the Philippines, as mentioned, Quezon City is a prime example. It's not just the largest city in Metro Manila, it's also one of the most populous. Sobrang daming tao. So in places like Quezon City, class, you'll see high-rise condos, crowded neighborhoods, and busy streets. Bakit? Because people are drawn to cities like this for work, education, and better services. But this also means more pressure on housing, traffic system, and public spaces, like I mentioned in the previous slide. But interestingly, population density varies depending on the kind of area we're looking at. So, first, agricultural areas tend to have high population density too, but for a different reason. Families there are often large because they need more hands to help with farm work. While for urban and industrialized areas like Quezon City, usually have smaller families. No, raising kids in the city is expensive. We know that. May bayad sa education, sa pagkain, healthcare, and madami pang iba. And since both parents usually work, they might choose to have fewer children. So whether a place is densely populated or not, it depends a lot on the local economy and lifestyle. Iba-iba ang dynamics class, but at the end of the day, it all ties back to how people live and make a living in that area. At this point, let's proceed to demographic structure. So demographic structure refers to the age distribution of a population. In simple terms, ilan ang bata, ilan ang matatanda. Is your country full of young people, or are most citizens already aging? So this age breakdown matters a lot because it affects how society is shaped. So it influences three areas. The first one is the school and job needs. If the population is mostly young, you'll need more classrooms, teachers, and job opportunities. Second, healthcare demands. Older populations need more medical services. Ano pa ba? Caregivers and healthcare related support. And lastly, for political priorities. The government sets different policies depending on whether they're serving a young or aging population. Iba ang focus class ng gobyerno kung karamihan ng tao ay kabataan versus senior citizens. For example, here in the Philippines, where we have a relatively young population, there's a huge demand for schools, scholarships, entry-level jobs, and skills training programs. But in countries like Japan or Italy, where the population is aging, the priority shifts to healthcare facilities, ano pa, retirement support, and the elderly care services. So understanding this demographic structure helps decision makers plan for what the people really need based on their age group. Kasi iba-iba ang pangangailangan ng bawat henerasyon. And when it comes to deciding whether or not to have children, one major driving force is economics. Yes, pera talaga ang isa sa pinakamalaking factors. Aminin na natin yan, class. We know that raising a child isn't cheap. From food and clothes to education and healthcare, lahat may gastos. So for many families, especially in urban areas like Quezon City or here in Naga City, having more kids can feel like a financial burden. But on the flip side, in some rural or agricultural communities, having more children is seen as an investment. No more helping hands on the farm or at home. And this economic perspective affects reproductive choices in a big way. So if a family is financially stable, they may feel more confident about having children. But if a couple is struggling with work, housing, or healthcare, they might delay or avoid having kids altogether. That's where access to reproductive health services becomes essential. When people, especially women, have access to contraception, na pa ba, proper maternal care, education, they are better equipped to make decisions that fit their financial situation and life goals. So in short class, reproductive choices aren't just personal. They are practical and economics plays a big part. In urban communities like Metro Manila and as previously mentioned, Quezon City, it's very common to see double income couples. Ibig sabihin, both partners are working full time. And for many of them, The main focus is building their careers and securing financial stability. But why does this happen? Living in the city is expensive. Now, the rent, the transportation, the food, and education, well, it all adds up. So both partners often need to work just to keep up with daily expenses and maintain a certain lifestyle. And because of this, class, starting or growing a family sometimes takes a back seat. Para sa kanila, ang nagpo-focus muna sa career goals before thinking about having a children is more important. And others may choose to have fewer kids or delay parenthood altogether. And this trend affects population growth in urban areas. No? Less time and resources for raising children often means lower birth rates compared to rural areas. And in short, in the fast paced life of the city, many couples prioritize professional growth uh, before family life. And practical choice muna bago ang personal plans. So coming from our last point where urban couples tend to delay having kids due to career and cost of living, let's look at the flip side, the situation in less developed agricultural countries. So in many of these regions, agriculture is the main source of livelihood. Life isn't centered around office jobs or career advancement. It's more about working in the land and providing for the family through farming. And that's why in these areas, we often see high population density. More children means more helping hands sa bukid. And kids aren't just dependents, they are part of the workforce. So families in agricultural communities tend to be larger because, una, there's less access to reproductive health education or services. Next, children contribute economically to the household. And lastly, cultural values often support having big families. So, unlike urban areas where career and lifestyle influence family planning, in agricultural regions, it's more about survival, tradition, and shared labor. Class, different environments, different priorities. And that's how economics and lifestyle shape population patterns around the world. Following that, here's something you've probably noticed too, that urban populations have increased dramatically, and a big reason behind that is migration. No, people from rural areas move to cities looking for better opportunities like stable jobs, higher wages, quality education, and improved access to healthcare. Sa madaling salita, class, gusto ng mas magandang buhay. And this movement is called rural to urban migration. It's one of the main drivers of city growth, and that's why cities like Quezon City continue to expand and become more crowded over time. But of course, with more people migrating to urban areas, we also face more pressure on housing, transportation, job ability, and public services. So habang lumalaki ang populasyon sa lungsod or sa city, kailangan din ng better planning para ma-accommodate ang lahat. And urbanization isn't just about numbers, it's about movement, it's about change, and the hopes of people that they carry with them when they leave the countryside for the city. Now that we've talked about how migration affects urban growth, let's shift to a bigger question. How do governments manage population size? So as populations grow, especially in fast developing areas, governments often face tough decisions, like should they try to slow population growth? And if so, paano? No, in what ways? Now class, these include some common strategies. Una na dyan ang pag-promote ng family planning, encouraging people to plan how many children they want and when. Next is providing access to reproductive health services, no? Katulad ng contraceptions, pre and postnatal care, and also sex education. And lastly, there are legal debates on abortion and contraception, which can be very controversial, especially in countries with strong religious or cultural values, like here in the Philippines. Pero kahit anong strategy pa yan, one thing is clear: population control must always respect human rights. So in democratic societies, decisions about family size and reproductive health should be voluntary. It should be informed and ethical. Hindi pwedeng pilitin ang mga tao. So the goal is to empower individuals and families to make the best choices for themselves and not to control them. After everything we've discussed, from urban migration to population control, here's a big question to reflect on. Is having a child an economic asset or a burden to the family? Well, the answer really depends on the context, where the family lives, what their financial situation is, and what kind of support systems they have. In rural or agricultural communities class, children are often seen as assets, not uh, they help out on the farm, they contribute to the household early on, and the more kids you have, the more helping hands you get. Pero sa urban settings, especially in cities like Quezon City or Manila, it's different story. It means that raising a child, no, is about gastos sa edukasyon, sa pagkain, healthcare, extracurriculars, and etc. It could also mean that both parents usually work full time, so children becomes another challenge. And in this case, children can feel more like a financial burden, especially if resources are limited. But let's take note. This question isn't just about money. It also touches on values, personal goals, and quality of life. So, is a child an asset or a burden? It's not a simple yes or no. It depends on how society, culture, and the economy shape our realities. Okay, for this slide, class, do you agree or disagree? The greatest threat to human existence is our own lack of ability to control our own growth. Heavy, right? Pero sobrang relevant. So after everything we've explored from overpopulation, urban migration, reproductive health, and economic realities, this question hits at the core of it all. If we keep growing in numbers without proper planning, education, and resource management, what happens? There could be food and water shortages, overcrowded cities, ano pa ba? Environmental destruction, and lastly, the increase of poverty and inequality. But on the other side, others might argue, no, that it's not population growth itself, um, but it's how we manage resources and distribute opportunities. So, what do you think? Do you agree that our inability to control population growth is the biggest threat to humanity? Or do you disagree, believing that innovation, education, and cooperation can solve the challenges of a growing world? So you think about it, can reflect, because your opinion matters. All right, let's move to the next slide. Class, do you agree or disagree? Deciding not to have kids is not selfish. It's sensible. Tough one, isn't it? But let's break it down. So in today's world, deciding whether or not to have children isn't just about personal choice. Definitely, it's influenced by many factors, no? Una na dyan ang financial stability, career goals natin, the environmental concerns as well, and personal health. So, is it really selfish to decide not to have kids? Well, for some, choosing not to have children might seem like a sensible decision, especially when considering like the financial strain of raising a child in an urban setting, the environmental concerns about overpopulation and resource depletion, and of course, the personal freedom, the freedom of your career choice, freedom to travel, and self-development. Kaya lang, on the other hand, some people will argue that having children is part of life's natural cycle or even a cultural expectation. Kaya lang, is it really fair to expect everyone to follow the same path? Now, do you agree that deciding not to have kids is sensible, especially in today's world? Or do you disagree that thinking it's selfish and goes against traditional family values? What do you think? Okay, let's spark those reflection questions first and let's talk about migration. We know already that migration is about the movement of people from one place to another, either for a short period or long term. Now, seasonal migration class, it happens when people move for certain times of the year. For example, a lot of OFWs are seasonal workers. They go abroad for work, like in construction or caregiving, for example, but only during a contract period. Then they return to their homes when their job is done. But there's also a long term migration. It's when people leave their hometowns or countries permanently or for a long while, usually to find better opportunities. Now, and people migrate for a bunch of reasons. Andyan na yung for better job opportunities. They think of higher pay or a different industry. Andyan na din yung to escape conflict or disaster. And lastly, for the reason to be with your family or experience a new lifestyle. So whether it's for months or for good, migration affects both places that people live and where they go. We have these pull factors. These are the reasons that attract people to move to a certain place. It's like the magnet that draws them in. So a big pull factor is the preference or desire. People might want to live somewhere because they believe it offers better opportunities or a better lifestyle. Maybe it's a place with better job prospects, higher wages, or even better healthcare and education. For example, class, the developed countries like the US, Canada, or Australia, those countries attract immigrants because they offer opportunities that might not be available in less developed countries, and it's the promise of a higher standard of living, a more stable economy, and access to better services that often pulls people in. So basically, people migrate to places they think they will give them a shot better shot at achieving their goals or improving their quality of life. So, while pull factors attract people to certain places, plus there are also push factors, the reasons that force people to leave their home countries. And these are the things that make staying too difficult or dangerous, so they have no choice but to move. So some major push factors includes war, political instability, famine, and environmental hazard. Isa-isahin natin. So for war, pag may gera o digmaan sa isang bansa, well, force talaga ang mga tao na lumikas para sa kaligtasan. Halimbawa, the Syrian Civil War, which forced millions of Syrians to leave their homes and seek refuge in neighboring countries like Turkey or even in Europe. Next, political instability. Kung unstable ang gobyerno ng isang bansa o walang kasiguradahan sa safety at freedom, definitely, mga tao will look for more stable places. Halimbawa, Venezuela has been going through political and economic issues, which pushed millions of Venezuelans to migrate to nearby countries like Colombia or Brazil to escape the crisis. Meron tayong famine o pag walang pagkain or may matinding gutom sa isang bansa, well, people have no choice but to leave. Now, example, in the Horn of Africa, class countries like Somalia and Ethiopia often face famine. So many people migrate for the reason of finding better access to food and resources. And lastly, environmental hazards, no? Natural disasters like typhoons, floods, or droughts force people to leave dangerous areas. Halimbawa, after Hurricane Katrina in 2005, maraming tao from New Orleans had to move to other parts of the US dahil sa matinding pagbaha. So, when life at home becomes too tough or dangerous, migration becomes the only option to survive and start fresh somewhere else. Class, as we wrap up today's discussion, here's a thought to keep in mind. When we talk about population, growth, and development, it's easy to get caught up in numbers. But the true strength of any nation goes beyond just its population size. A nation's strength lies not in its numbers, but in the way it values its people. So this quote reminds us that what truly makes a country strong is not how many people there are, but how they are treated, whether they have the opportunities, support, and resources they need to thrive. Thank you for listening, and I hope today's session gave you some new perspective.